ready for this. And we've got Death Shadow on the left of your screen there versus Rakdos Painter. Game 1 unsideboarded. Who have you got, Devin?
So this is Dimir Death Shadow against Rakdos Painter. Kind of an interesting matchup here. I It's really close. I feel like I would typically favor the Painter side of things because the Painter deck can not only, present a bunch of threats to be able to make sure that the Dimir Death Shadow deck has to answer every single one of them, but also cards like Goblin Welder, as you see being on the stack here, even if one of the artifact threats gets countered, we can access that threat later down the road with a copy of the Goblin Welder.
Like I've got a rough understanding of what Painted does. I know it can come in a couple of different colors, etc. The Death Shadow deck, that's more my style of play, more the cards I'm going to be fully aware of what's happening. So we might have to lean on you a little bit here of what is going on the Painted side as we see a Petal is going to be cast, and yet we're not going to counter that one. Here comes Urza's Saga, super powerful land in multiple formats. And again, a sleeper. I'm wondering what's happening at the minute with the new Lord of the Rings set. What sleeper cards have we not picked up on? You know what I mean? It's all about the Ring and Bowmaster currently, as we are going to see a Painter serving on the stack.
Yeah, and this Rakdos Painter, which is kind of more of the flavor that we've seen lately in terms of the Painter deck with the supplemental sets that have been printed. So the Black Splash here features for Orcish Bowmaster. That is a card in Austin's deck list. And then another card that I really hope we get to see here in Chaos Defiler. We actually saw it on camera a few rounds ago in the hands of the other Painter player who was on camera. That card's really sick, especially when combined with Goblin Welder. But, a lot of really new, interesting additions as we see Fatal Push take care of Goblin Welder, Painter Servant, and the deck that the card is, or the card that the deck is named after, when combined with Grindstone, which happens to be a 1-mana artifact that you can find off of Urza Saga. That's an instant kill.
Well, I literally about to say, can you kind of explain to me what's going on and why does it look like we're just playing this dawdly little 2-mana creature coming down on the battlefield, turning everything into a certain color? But on the other side, we're going to start off with a Ponder. We're not going to shuffle. We're going to keep that card on top, potentially digging for more land, Wasteland being one of them, getting that Saga out of here just so we can't get that combo going that you spoke about. Do you have a Snuff Out in hand? I'm pretty sure it's not as easy as I think it is to cast. It is, if you show a Swamp, pay for life. Oh, we can cast it. We could get off that paint off the battlefield if we needs be, but is there anything else we're holding it up for? Is there any other creatures we're looking out for?
Don't necessarily need to cast it now. Honestly, Garrison probably wants to just take damage from the Painter anyways, given that Garrison is playing Death Shadow. So taking a couple of points from the Painter here or there might actually be, more beneficial for Garrison down the road. And also the other thing that Painter Servant does. So I'm gonna go ahead and assume that Austin named blue with Painter Servant because there are copies of Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast in Austin's main deck. Painter on black, actually. Okay,
so that turns off the Snuff Out, right? To Snuff Out target non-black creature.
That is a good point. So actually, that very heads up from Austin, knowing that Garrison's playing Death Shadow, now the Snuff Out is turned off. That does make a lot of sense.
That's and we see this, and I'll hammer on about it until the day Legacy starts being a thing. Players are so involved in Legacy. Every interaction, every small little bit of detail, every bit of patience is key in these matchups, and we get to see it in Paper Magic. Now we're back from the post-COVID era. It's so good. I love watching. I literally love watching, love casting this sort of high-level Magic of people playing also these all small little details and be able to pick up on them.
The reason I wanted to see him named blue, just so we could go Painter Servant named blue, and then Pyroblast or Red Elemental Blast your land. I wanted to see that happen, but that line is also really bad in the face of a Fatal Push or a Snuff Out, because if the Painter Servant dies in response to the ability, then that spell would not resolve. So we're gonna go for a Thoughtseize here after the Fable of the Mirror Breaker got Force of Will last turn, seeing a Grindstone and a Fable. Gonna go ahead and take the Grindstone. Kind of a tough spot here for Garrison, because if Austin does draw a land, maybe can resolve the Fable, but doesn't want the Grindstone to resolve with the Painter Servant on the battlefield.
Okay, here's a topic for you. What format is Fable not legal in? It seems like he's playing every single format that you can play in now. Such a powerful free drop enchantment. Talking about sleepers earlier on. Where we're going to, on the other side, it looks like we're playing a modern deck to me. We're cycling Street Wraiths, drawing 2 cards. We're playing shock lands instead of, these dual lands. Here comes another one. Our life total drops a little bit more, down to 8. So if we've got any Death Shadows, speaking of it, comes down, it's going to be a 5/5.
Yeah, typically in Legacy, you don't usually see Shocklands. This is the one exception here. The Dimir Death Shadow deck really just wants to deplete its own life total to be able to cast, to be able to make those shadows quite a bit bigger. As we see Garrison go ahead and cast a Brainstorm here. We still know about the Fable of the Mirror Breaker in Austin's hand, really looking for a land or maybe even just like a 0-mana artifact. I guess a Lotus Petal would allow us to cast it, but then we could use the Mox Opal. Really just wants to try and find a mana source or, maybe a Saga to get a Grindstone down the road or even just the Grindstone itself.
So Painter, I'm guessing it works more like a combo deck, right? Like we don't have access to things like Brainstorms, ways to kind of manipulate through our deck and like turn and burn and get back into this. We are literally living off the top of our deck 9 times out of 10. I'm looking at the deck list and it literally, besides, I guess you could call Fable a way to draw extra cards. Goblin, not well, the Goblin Engineer can tutor something up and maybe do some shenanigans that way. But there's no way of card advantage that's super sticking out to me here. Am I
There's
missing
one.
something?
There's one. It's a Phyrexian Dragon Engine, which is a card that Austin is only playing one copy of to be able to tutor with the Goblin Engineer, and that has an ability. So it has Unearth, which means you could put unearth it from your graveyard, put it into play for its Unearth cost. But it says when it enters the battlefield from your graveyard, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. That's very powerful, not with its own Unearth ability also, but it's very powerful with the Goblin Welder and the Goblin Engineer because you can get it into play without having to pay the Unearth cost, and you still get the trigger off of it.
So again, I'm not super deep into Legacy. I just know enough that I need to. Is this deck kind of weak to removal spells? I'm getting that sort of vibe. Like it needs welders in the battlefield. It needs painted servants in the battlefield. If I can keep them down and not on the battlefield, there's a good chance I can win the game.
Sort of, but you also have a lot of ways to fight through that. We talked about the Unearth on Dragon Engine. A Goblin Engineer can go ahead and find that. And then you also have Bowmaster creates 2 blocker or 2 bodies in the battlefield. Fable creates a lot of value. Urza Saga makes multiple bodies. So the combo itself can sometimes be weak to removal, but it does have a lot of ways to grind.
Cool. Let's see if we can see it as we've got double Death Shadow on the battlefield. And this is kind of where we're going to start playing that dance now. Hold on a minute. My life total was 5. These painted servants add another 2, so that'll drop me down to 3. That'll put us in lightning bolt range if there's any in the deck. Obviously, it's not open deck list currently, so they wouldn't know that, but we do know there is 2 in the main.
Yeah, and this is a force chump block here for Austin. The other shadow is going to connect, putting Austin down to 2. We'll have to see what we can find. 2 plus the Painter Servant would not be lethal. We're going to slam a Fable. That's going to get forced, and that is going to do it for game number 1.
That was real simple. That just kind of played everything that Death Shadow wanted to do on the left of your screen there. Let's see if we can get these deck lists up for you, though. Although, let's see what they got going on. So here's Austin's deck. This is the Rakdos painter list. Talk me through this sideboard. Anything you like bringing in here to show this up?
All right, so we got 2 copies of Fairy Macabre. Those will likely not be coming in. Magus of the Moon is interesting. There's not a lot of basic lands. If we actually look at what we'll see, Garrison's deck will send a second. But that card can be very powerful against Shadow, being able to cut them off of blue or black mana. Fury, Shadow's usually going to be a little bit bigger than Fury, so you probably don't want to go towards that. Surgical, likely not. Cast into the Fire, that's only for the ring. Likely doesn't want to bring that in. Sheoldred's Edict, a nice removal spell, being able to take care of a Death Shadow, so I think I like that. And then a couple of one-ofs here, a Pithing Needle, a Soul Guide, a Thorn of Amethyst, and an Ensnaring Bridge. My guess is you probably go to the Bridge, but maybe not the other cards.
Interesting. Okay, let's see if we can move across and see what's in this Death Shadow deck. Here it is. And one thing that pops out to me straight off the bat, no basic lands.
Yep, so those Maguses are going to be slam dunks here for Austin. As far as Garrison sideboard is concerned, we have a couple of Plague Engineers. Probably doesn't want to go towards those. Not a ton of X1s on the Painter side of things. Tourach, maybe if you can get a couple of cards out of Austin's hand, but not sure if you want to necessarily go towards that. The Hydroblast, great. Austin's got a lot of red cards. Those are slam dunks. Surgical Extraction is kind of an interesting one. You can break up the Goblin Engineer, Goblin Welder stuff because it gets it from the graveyard. So that could be potentially powerful. Sheoldred's Edict if you want more removal. Don't hate that. Force of Negation, it's kind of weird. A lot of Austin's good cards, with the exception of Fable the Mirror Breaker, are creatures. So that one really only hits Fable. Don't know if you want to go towards that. Grafdigger's Cage, Counterbalance, Null Rod, and I'm not quite sure what that last card is. Will talk to me about what is
About the
look at the deck list here.
What's it called?
Palantír of Orthanc. I don't even know.
Another new
we'll
one from the new set.
But the Null Rod's great.
At the beginning of your end step,
the Null Rod is
put
great.
An influence counter on it and scry 2. Then target opponent may have you draw a card. If that player doesn't, you mill X cards, where X is the number of influence counters on it. And that player loses life equal to the total value of those cards. Interesting one. Very comes across as very grindy to me. So basically, do you want me to draw cards, or do you want to take a bit of damage?
Well, I think we'll call that one for the grindy matchups. I don't know if that's necessarily if you would classify this as a grindy matchup, but maybe wants to go towards that. But the Null Rod is a
It looked
slam
pretty
dunk.
good if they say, okay, you can mill free and you mill free Murktides. And you're just like, yeah, cool, take 21 to the face. That'd be pretty sick. But, we're living in dream world as we always do. I think the players are just finishing shuffling up. Let's see if we can get back down there. Yeah, it looks like what's going on. Maybe a mulligan's happening. I'm not quite too sure. But remember, this is a winning in. We've got 8 rounds today of legacy action. We're in round number 7. If you just tune in, welcome. We started with 172 players. We're trying to whittle that down to the final 8 so we can bring you that top 8 and see who's going to walk away with all the prize money, the bragging rights, the trophies, those glorious points to get them one step closer to the end of year 16-person invite-only championships, 25k event, 16 players at 25 grand on the line. It's crazy about. But then on top of that, it gets a little bit sweeter. Not only do you get a re-invite if you manage to take it down, you also get a direct invite to the Pro Tour. You get to skip all that RC sort of nonsense. No, you go straight to the Pro Tour, wherever that is going to be held. I believe at the beginning of next year, probably around February, there'll be the next one when they start getting announced. But great to see as both players start drawing that opening 7.
Might even, who knows? Maybe it's Detroit, maybe it's Madison, maybe it's Indianapolis.
Well, if it is, I can tell you a few more facts about those places to go see and what they're famous for. So we've got that to come later on, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you stick around while we resolve our mulligan over on Austin's side here. So if you haven't hit that follow button yet, why not hit the follow button? If you'd like paper magic from all formats, legacy, modern, pioneer, I believe there's even talk of like some sort of limited ones coming in the future potentially. So make sure if you're into paper magic, you love watching this stuff live, you need to support these channels. Hit that follow button, hit that little bell, make sure it's on. So every time this channel goes live, you are notified on whatever device that you watch it on, so you don't miss a single thing. Plus you get to see and hear more of my weird British accent and Devin's lovely, beautiful face when we get that on the screen.
I think it's the other way around. Oh, I guess I don't have a British accent, but
no, so in Europe, this isn't a novelty, my British accent. But in America,
okay.
everyone's like, oh, it's a British person. That was my American accent for anybody listening at home. I can't do accents. Okay,
looks like Austin's on 6, Garrison's on 7. I believe Austin has decided to keep the 6 here, so we'll have to see what we want to put back. But pretty interesting game 1. We did see Austin was able to find a couple of those combo pieces, resolve the Painter Servant, did the heads up play of naming black to stop the Snuff Out, but was kind of unable to fight through the multiple forces and removal spells and the multiple shadows that Garrison had. But as far as sideboarding is concerned, I wonder if the matchup changes at all. I still kind of like Austin's side of things, but we'll definitely have to see how this plays out.
So Austin Armo down to 6 decides to keep this. What's the like the fairy tale hand? What's the best 6 he could be having?
Well, it probably starts with that.
Okay,
starts with the Land Grindstone,
making your job easy.
Force of Will. Yep, yeah, exactly. But a lot, just basically the combo plus fast mana. So if we look at, if we take a look at Austin's mana base here, there's 4 Ancient Tombs, 1 City of Traders, and then we saw the Lotus Petal, 3 Lotus Petal, 1 Mox Opal. So a decent amount of fast mana. But yeah, that's kind of what you're looking for: fast mana combo, and also just the Urza Saga. The Dimir Shadow deck is good at fighting 1-for-1. There's a lot of Force of Will. I guess Force of Will 2-for-1s yourself, but you have cards like that and other removal spells, counter spells, but those cards aren't really that good at answering Urza Saga.
Ponder is the play for the turn. When deciding not to shuffle, just going to hit 3 back on draw 1. I think it was a force of me drawn. So we've got potentially more counter magic if we want it. Here comes a Goblin Engineer. Is it going to hit the battlefield? Looks like it does. Trigger. We get to go search our deck, put a artifact into our graveyard. Potential targets for this. We've got that the fraction one that you were talking about, Frozen Dragon Engine. Great name, by the way. R&D, well done. Whoever named that, well done. You managed to sneak a few extra words into that name than it's probably needed. Any other good targets for that? Are we looking at maybe getting a Painter Servant in there, or?
So you could go towards Painter Servant. You could go towards if you have a copy of Goblin Welder in hand, you might actually want to put the Chaos Defiler right straight into the graveyard as a potential, down the road if you have the Welder. Obviously the Goblin Engineer cannot get back the Chaos Defiler, but Welder can. Could also go towards something like a Nihil Spellbomb if you want to try to get the graveyard out of the way for a Murktide Regent, or I think that's an Ensnaring Bridge Will. That came in from the sideboard. That's also a pretty good target.
Yeah, that's I think that's the OG art of Ensnaring Bridge. There's a little bit of glare there, but it's fine. That's what we're here for with our eagle eyes. As we're going to just pass the turn back, we're going to have Garrison's going to untap, drawn for the turn. But first, we're going to fire off this Thoughtseize. Have a little look at the hand, what we're working with.
Got
We've
a
got
Painter Servant, a Goblin Engineer, and a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Now, the Painter Servant, it's funny because we have actually the Painter Servant and the Grindstone, and we have the Goblin Engineer to kind of loop those sort of. So we're going to take the Painter Servant to keep Austin off of an artifact, which makes sense because if the Painter Servant hits the battlefield and Austin draws a land, you could say just immediately sack the Painter Servant to get back the Ensnaring Bridge. And if we take a look at Garrison's, looking at Garrison's deck list, there's actually I'm not seeing a single out like a single bounce spell. I'm going to take a look at Garrison's deck list. We saw the sideboard. Sometimes you see like a copy of Brazen Borrower or something along those lines, but I don't see a single bounce spell in Garrison's deck list. So if that bridge hits the battlefield, that's not going anywhere.
No, there is literally nothing. Obviously, we've got the big threats. We've got Delver, Murktide, Bowmasters, and Death Shadows. That's the threats of choice. Oh, I suppose we could just put Street Wraith into that equation as well. It is a creature. It does have a body to it, just not the main game plan of having it in the deck. What are we going to do with our turn? Starting off with a Delver. Here it comes.
Yep, and looks like Austin likely didn't quite get a good look of what Austin drew that turn. We do know about the Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but looks like we're missing some land drops and not able to deploy that. Take a look at the Delver, and yeah, really, Austin also just kind of wants to find an artifact too, because once you find a single artifact, you can kind of get the party started, where you can sack an artifact, maybe get a combo piece, and then if you find another artifact down the road, that could get back the other combo piece, and kind of get the ball rolling there. And Fable the Mirror Breaker also notably makes artifacts. So if you're, the 2/2 can make an artifact that you could sacrifice to the Goblin Engineer to get back something from the graveyard. So yeah, a lot of cool things that Fable enables, especially in this deck.
Trying to look at the land count, because we had this problem last turn game as well, where we were kind of missing the vital land drops that we needed. Looks like we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11. Okay, we've got 21 land, so it's quite a few, I suppose, for Legacy. But then we don't have ways to kind of turn and burn through our deck with things like Brainstorm, etc. As we see a big Murktide come down here, that is a 7/7 flyer.
That's big. And we see a red elemental blast from Austin going to go ahead and fight over that. And we're fighting back. There's a force from Garrison. And let's see if maybe Austin picked up another blast. Does not look like that was the case.
No more cards left in hand. Delver, is it going to flip? Doesn't look like it's going to. We're going to get across for 7. Here comes the big hits. We're looking for land.
Yeah, Austin really wants to try and find specifically, I think the best draw step here might be just a 0 mana artifact. So you could play the 0 mana artifact and then sack it immediately to get that engineer to engineer the bridge into play. That's a 1 mana artifact, which also does the trick, because we can go 1 mana for Grindstone and then we can sacrifice the Grindstone to put that Ensnaring Bridge into play. And as we talked about, there's actually not a single way for Garrison to remove that.
Can you just do, people just tuning in or just watching, maybe don't know too much about Legacy, talk to me about this little interaction here. Why are we looking at the top of our deck and then we're able to fetch? What's going on? I don't see any baubles on the battlefield.
So Delver of Secrets has a trigger where you look at the top card of your library. If it's a spell, you can flip the Delver. So we took a look at the top card. We didn't like what we saw, so then we fetched on our upkeep. Now, interesting, Austin is not going to go ahead and go for the Goblin Engineer. Just going to go ahead and take a hit from the Murktide Regent. I mean, I'm fairly certain that was the Ensnaring Bridge. I know it was, like you said, the glare is a little hard to see, but
yeah, it's the Ensnaring Bridge. You've got it right. Here it comes.
All right, there's the bridge. Interesting that we took a hit there, because I think we had the second red mana available. We could have maybe done that in combat or before combat. Oh, a Magus of the Moon.
This is going to turn everything into a basic mountain, and as we know, completely lock them out. How many cards are in hand? I think it's just 2. So if that Delver does flip, it's not going to be able to attack it. But just that being a 1/1 again, we don't want to be attacking while there's a 2/2 on the other side of the battlefield, and we're just passing the turn back. Okay, huge rip there for Austin.
It's almost like we turned from a painter deck into a prison deck. We got a Ensnaring Bridge and a Moon on the battlefield. And, Austin does have the potential to kind of maybe go for a combo down the road. Maybe doesn't feel necessary to do that. Wants to establish a bunch of lock pieces on the battlefield. And you know what? Garrison's had enough.
Yeah, you managed to get Ensnaring Bridge on the battlefield and Blood Mooning me out. Basically, that's going to be too much for us to deal with. So maybe that's going to affect how we start sideboarding now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just tuning in, Will Hall, Damon O'Donnelly. We're bringing you round number 7 currently of 8 before we cut to that glorious top 8 legacy action here at the NRG series. We're going to see if we can get the 75 up on the screen for you so you can see what the players are working with. We're going to see if we can start firing off. Let's go with the Shadow deck first. So now we know that there's Maguses in the deck. Now we know that there's a bridge. Does that affect how we sideboard? Was there any cards that you think you'd be on the edge of your seat? Maybe I don't need that, but now you're like, oh, hold on, I straight up lose to it. Do I need to bring these Force of Negations in or anything like that?
Well, specifically with Ensnaring Bridge, that's kind of awkward because you're not usually casting it, right? The Ensnaring Bridge is usually being found off of Goblin Engineer and then being put into play off of the Engineer or the Welder. So it's not like you're really going to ever be able to counter that given, when it's going to come up. The Fatal Push is likely we're already in the deck anyways. There's a lot of creatures in the Painter side of things. We talked about the Welders, the Engineers, the Painter Servants. So, you're definitely going to want those in, especially now that you've seen Magus, because you can, with the Magus in the stack, crack a fetch land, maybe float black mana, let the Magus resolve, and then Fatal Push it. So, I mean, as far as what else we really have available to us, there's not really a lot. And as we talked about, we look at the deck list, not a single way to remove Bridge from the battlefield, no Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, pretty rough. Okay, let's see if we can move it across, see what Austin's got going on. Here's the 75 for you all. Anything change play draw dependent here, or are we just sticking to our guns? You know what I mean? Our sideboard work game 1, game 2. Let's stick to it game 3.
No, the Maguses are still slam dunks. Definitely want those. The Sheoldred's Edict, I'm guessing those probably came in to be able to handle Murktide Regents, and the Ensnaring Bridge, we kind of saw that just with the game by itself, that game too. So maybe the Soul Guide Lantern is something you could look towards to be able to have that as another tool to remove the graveyard prior to a Murktide Regent hitting the battlefield. But other than that, not really a ton that Austin is looking for.
So Austin now knows that, potentially Garrison's quite weak to these sort of Blood Moon effects to the Magus coming down. Is that going to affect our opening hands? Maybe we keep like a bit of a dodgy 7, but we have a potential turn 2 Magus or something. Do you think that we're going to edge towards that, or do you think if it's still kind of a rough hand, you would mulligan it? You're not going to put all your eggs in one basket, basically.
Yeah, it's tough given the presence of force in Garrison's deck list. So if you keep a hand like maybe a sketchy hand that's like all in on Magus and you get forced, it can be, really awkward. And again, I think Austin is slightly ahead in this matchup anyways. There's a lot of ways to grind here. You do have the sideboard haymakers in the form of Magus. So, I mean, honestly, I think Austin's just trying to kind of play a little bit of the chip shot 1-for-1 game with Garrison up until the point where, he's feel like he's established control of the game and then can, start the combo from there.
Well, let's see what the players are doing. Looks like they've drawn their opening 7s. I think they're deciding if they want to keep or mull. Remember, this is going to be a winning in for one of these two players. If they manage to take this down, they can advance their record to 6-1, so they can be able to ID the last round, and we will see them again in the top 8. As starting off the turn, we're going to go with a Shockland into a Delver of Secrets. Kind of how we want it to happen over on Garrison's side.
Oh yeah, yep. Starting off the life total, being able to pay a little bit of life to get the Death Shadow rolling, and turn 1 Delver is certainly what Garrison's looking for, especially if Austin has a fast combo hand. Which, if we're casting Grindstone on turn 1, that definitely could be the case. We could see a pretty attempt at a quick kill here.
Okay, interesting. Why did we not Daze that then, when we have the option to?
If there was a Daze in Garrison's hand, maybe he wants to save it for something like a Magus of the Moon, given that maybe it's possible that if Garrison did have the Daze, didn't have a second land and maybe didn't have a force, wanted to be able to hold up the Daze for a potential turn 2 Magus.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Just wanted to know, what's the explanation behind it? Why? Because me clearly being inexperienced, I would have fired that off. I would like to, because which is another thing we haven't spoke about with these shock lands. Returning it to my hand and then re-shocking myself, doing more damage to myself, playing into my Death Shadow sort of line. Love that. Love those interactions. As Del was going to come across here for 3 points of damage, and we're just going to pass the turn back.
Yeah, it looks like a Brainstorm, a Daze, a Snuff Out, a Street Wraith, and I think the last card might be a Shadow. So Garrison's hand is pretty stacked. But, if Austin is able to kind of put some more mana onto the battlefield to play around that Daze, we're going to go ahead and just start with the red Elemental Blast with the fetch up. So if a Daze happens, we can pay for it. That is going to resolve from Garrison. And, Austin seems to be navigating this spot very, very well.
Well, that's the way you get to be in 5-1, being contention to get to top 8, clearly. But we are just going to pass the turn back. Oh, a little bit of a stumble, but we do know what those top cards are from the Brainstorm. I think it was a Daze left on top of the deck. Street Wraith going to cycle. Drop our life total a little bit less. What?
So that's going to put us to 16. We can fetch, no fetch. So just shock. That's going to put us to 14. So still cannot quite deploy the Death Shadow here. If the Snuff Out is able to be cast, then we can go ahead and deploy the Death Shadow because that'll put us to 10. But Austin has not provided us with a target for the Snuff Out yet, and then 2 Dazes as we talked about. So if Austin does have a lot of powerful threes, we talked about Fable the Mirror Breaker and things of that nature. And look at this, 2 mana, leaving up the Bloodstained Mire. Austin just playing around Daze very, very well.
So maybe we're going to hard cast this first Daze and then let them pay, then return one of our shocks. No, looks like we're starting off this way.
The pump fake there. So now Austin almost assuredly knows that there's at least 1 Daze in Garrison's hand, given that, we started to tap 2 mana for a little bit of pump fake. So we'll see if Austin picks up on that. But we're going to brainstorm first, maybe trying to see if we can find a force instead of. Yeah. So I'm guessing maybe you would consider forcing instead of double dazing. Maybe, say put back a Daze, force pitch a Daze. We'll have to see how Garrison wants to go ahead and sequence this. Also remember the force being able to pay 1 life is actually pretty relevant when it comes to the Death Shadow as well.
Is once these 2 cards on the battlefield, is that the combo?
You need to be able to activate the Grindstone. So the Grindstone, I believe, is 3 mana to activate. Yep. So we wouldn't be able to do the combo this turn, but assuming that we untapped with both permanents and 3 mana, then we'd be able to combo. Now, I will say, if you activate the Grindstone and Painter Servant gets removed in response to the Grindstone activation, then the Grindstone will resolve its normal ability without the Painters in play, which I believe is mill 3 cards, and if they share a color,
repeat it,
you get to mill again or something along those lines.
There's the production team there, all over it. They know exactly what's going on, getting that up on the screen for you all at home, so you can have a little read of it as we're going to crack our fetch land end of turn here. Any crazy options we got? I suppose we've got a bad land if we want to go and get that, because remember this is the Rakdos build. Whatever, I'm sure I've heard of painter in other colors. I've definitely heard of mono red. What's the advantages of splashing the black?
So for this particular splash, it looks like Austin has 3 copies of Orcish Bowmaster alongside 1 Chaos Defiler, and then in the sideboard, 2 copies of Sheoldred's Edict, and then I guess the Nihil Spellbomb in the main deck as well, being able to use the black mana off of that.
Here's the Daze that we've been sat on for quite a while here, returning one of our shock lands, and that's obviously going to be ideal so we can start deploying Death Shadows as our life total drops down to 11. There are only be tiny little Death Shadows, little 2/2s currently. And here comes 2. Get him on the battlefield, starts getting this damage in. 1 mana up. We know about there's a Snuff Out in hand. Oh, that's the only card in hand, I think. Oh, no, I think we must have played it back. That looks like a Hydroblast to me.
Yep, and they're only 2/2s now, but a fetch land off the top for Garrison represents quite a bit more damage. Now, sometimes there's 2 Watery Grave, 3 Underground Sea, but taking a look at the deck list, 3 Watery Grave here for Garrison. So a fetch land would represent quite a bit of damage on these shadows.
Okay, Fable's going to be attempted to be cast, but that Hydroblast is going to catch it, pull it out of midair. We're going to turn sideways, 4 damage, drop down to 12, and just pass the turn back. I feel like he's got openings. You know what I mean? On the other side, Garrison's only got 1 card in hand. He's living off the top of his deck here. Let's see if we can kind of press this advantage. 2 mana. Where are we going to go with this?
It's an interesting spot too, because we see a Sheoldred's Edict here for Austin. Normally, you wouldn't want your opponent to draw lands in the spot, but a fetch land representing 3 damage really changes the clock quite a bit here. So, normally you would want your opponent to just kind of draw all lands in the spot, but if your opponent's drawing lands that pump your creatures, then that changes the math as well. So we see an Edict here taking care of one of the shadows. A Saga deployed here for Austin. That's going to be very powerful. And then Engineer for Ensnaring Bridge. As we mentioned, no answers to that in the deck.
Oh, I think get a good look at what that was about to say. So Snuff Out was drawn for the turn, I think.
Yep, and that's going to grow the shadow for 4. So that's going to be a 6/6 now, I believe, which is look at that, Austin at 12.
We do get, we've got a blocker if we need be, because obviously as a Saga, we all know about how that can turn out constructs before it eventually does something. Just 2 cards in hand for Austin. Not quite a good look at them.
That Snuff Out was a massive top deck here for Garrison, not only getting the blocker out of the way, making the shadow a 6/6, and preventing Austin from getting back that Ensnaring Bridge. That has to be the best top deck for Garrison here.
All right, we're going to go for it. Make a break. That is...
Wow, another Snuff Out. Oh my goodness. And that's going to do it.
Back to back, like they look like they were like falling behind there, not being able to get themselves back into the game. But bam, double Snuff Out off the top of the deck. That is huge there. Congratulations to Garrison's going to take that down, advance their record to 6-1, and potentially be in the top 8 with a draw in the next round. We're going to try and get them in for an interview. So we're going to move back to the booth and we're going to talk about that round, talk about the events, what's going on, see if we can get some of the future slides going up. Well, let's see can we potentially get the players leaderboard up, this 16 slots that we've got going on. Remember, there's a lot of points on the line. You'll hear us talk about points all weekend long. And the idea is they want to be in the top 6 of the leaderboard for points so they can take up 6 of these slots here that you see in front of us. Yesterday, in the team event, Pioneer Modern Legacy, we were able to get Grayson, Matthew, and Eric into this event. That means they've got an invite to a 16-person, $25,000 invite-only tournament. And if they manage to take that one down, they get themselves a re-invite and they get themselves the PT invite, which is, for me personally, is the biggest carrot there of them all. When back in the day when we used to have PT queues, it used to be winner takes all. Whoever came first gets that one slot to the Pro Tour. I've played in over 400 people slots before. This is just a 16-person one. It's going to be huge, as it looks like we've got them sitting down for this interview. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Cool, that's good. Right, well, first off, congratulations on taking that one down. Almost some very timely top decks, let's say, towards the end there. How did that feel?
Yeah, they felt really good, especially because in Game 2, I took out my Snuff Outs because he was playing around Snuff Out with naming black for his Painter Servants, but then decided to value creature removal highly enough to bring them back in, and then drew both the Snuff Outs to be able to clear the way for my Death Shadows again. Was super relevant, of course.
Clearly, you know what I mean? Being able to get that drop, grow your Death Shadows, take the threats off the other side of the battlefield, and that Death Shadow got you there. But at the end of it, it was a really good game to watch. Very back and forth on both of them. I did think you were kind of falling behind at that one point, and then you was like, no, snuff out, easy, GG's, handshake. I'm going to advance to the top 8. Devin.
Yes. So about this, talk to me about this card in the sideboard. We had to look it up. It's Palantír of Orthanc. You knew that we were going to ask you about this, Harrison.
Yeah,
so let's hear it.
Honestly, this is 74 of a 75 of a list I found online. I'm not a Legacy player. This is my first Legacy event, outside of some Moto challenges. I came for the team event yesterday. I asked to borrow some cards from a buddy. We said we could put together Death Shadow. We got a few Underground Seas, and this Palantír card may be able to close games against Bridge, or against a Delver opponent, it was just a clock and card advantage, and just it's the colorless maddening hex for people who play blue-red Delver, I think. Yeah, it's been fun. I don't know if it's good, but it's been fun.
Have you managed to cast it all this weekend?
I cast it against my round 1 opponent, which was on Jet Delver. It won the game, but I lost that match. And I think that's the only time I've resolved it today.
Right. So, you're saying this is your first Legacy paper tournament, and you've just made a top 8 on it. That's huge. Off the bat, congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
A couple of proxy events or just local times, like hanging out, playing Manaless Dredge used to be the deck I was known for in my local area. But in terms of real Legacy or showing up with actual Force of Wills, yeah, this is my first time slinging like real reserve list cards.
So I'm guessing you weren't in the Legacy seat yesterday then.
No, it's Modern yesterday. Also Death Shadow, though, because I love me some Shadows.
One thing that Will and I were talking about during sideboarding is the Staring Bridge that came down in Game 2, and we were looking over the deck list, and we couldn't quite see something there. So, you must have been a little bit worried about that going into Game 3, but yeah, talk to me about that.
Yeah, for sure. I had the opportunity to interact with the Goblin Engineer on the stack. I decided not to. He found, he grabbed the Ensnaring Bridge off of it, and I said, okay, I'm drawing towards 2 fatal pushes before he's able to weld something out. And that was really my only out. Once it came down, I was dead. So Game 3, I sort of had to value being able to take off welders and engineers, and sort of why the Snuff Outs came back in.
I was going to have a follow-up question. That is, how did you almost re-sideboard or reevaluate your cards going into Game 3, knowing that they were in the deck, knowing that you don't really have an answer, or at least you took them out? Is it there's a Snuff Outs? Is that it, or did you change anything else?
Yeah, the Snuff Outs were the only thing that came back in after Game 2. I cut the Reanimates. The Reanimates are a cute card a lot of time. They've been all-stars all day, but they don't have a lot of utility in this matchup outside of sometimes just randomly growing a Death Shadow when you're like regrowing a Street Wraith or something. There's not removal that you have to fight through. They're not pitching any good creatures. So yeah, Reanimates came out for Game 3. Snuff Outs came back in because I needed to have more answers to their creatures, I realized. Yeah.
Last question that I got for you is the Orcish Bowmaster. We've heard a lot about this in Legacy. You mentioned you're not too much of a Legacy player, but how has this card felt for you?
This card is great when people know how to use it, and I do not. I've had a lot of I love flash decks. I played blue green flash back when it was like the Night Pack Ambusher deck in standard. End step flash on my Bowmaster, my opponent responds with 2 Brainstorms. Whereas I cast Brainstorm, my opponent responds with their Bowmaster. I'm like, oh, that's how this card's supposed to work. So I've just been valuing mana more than getting all the mileage of it. But I do think the card's very powerful. And I appreciate the flash jukiness of it.
So I guess my last question is going to be, what's the change? I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like I've played a little bit of Legacy. I know a bit about Legacy. Wouldn't say I'm an expert on it at all. I'm kind of also watching and growing as we go along. Kind of what you've done today. Obviously, you've managed to pick it up super quick. You're now going to probably be in the top 8. But what sort of the key differences you're finding from Modern to Legacy?
Micro decisions matter so much more. I play a lot Modern and definitely get people sometimes cascading, casting a violent outburst in response to fetch land while their mana's down, things like that. But every decision of when to fetch, of when to grab your lands, especially with Death Shadow, that you're also valuing your life total in terms of things. But just all the micro decisions and priority passes are so much more impactful. And I've always known that and been told that in terms of there's more decisions crunched into a smaller time frame in a lot of games of Legacy, and I definitely feel that and definitely have learned from today how to sequence better to hopefully avoid those mistakes I've been making during parts of the day.
That's what I've been saying all weekend long. Anytime we watch Legacy, I've always said that all these micro details that players are doing are so big brain, and you're going to do these things in certain orders, but when they really use every card to their advantage, fetching at the right times, casting, as you said, Bowmasters at the right times, not trying to use the mana advantage that we normally use in Modern. You want to use all the mana every turn. In Legacy, it's very about patience, knowing when to fire things off, and I love that. But we're going to let you go off. Get yourself a drink, go to the toilet, set yourself up, potentially try and get that handshake in the next round, and try and see you in that top 8. So congratulations yet again, and we'll speak to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, always a pleasure. Right, welcome back to the booth, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just tuning in, that is going to be the end of a round. Wrong. I'm being told we've got time shifted match. We've got more magic for you. Let's go down to it. Let's get straight into it. Let's go. Let's ignore me. Let's go straight down. Let's start. We've got Jeskai Delver versus Rakdos Painter. Obviously, we know about Rakdos Painter. We've just seen that one. We've seen a bit of Delver so far this weekend. Obviously, you don't think these players are, this quick. I think we're playing it at 1.5 speed for you all at home, so we can kind of get through as much of this magic as possible. Off the bat, Devin, who is favored game 1?
So, Will, you're telling me you can't play that fast? Come on.
Oh,
you could be able to shuffle that fast.
I'm an infect player. I'm in and done. That's it.
Yeah, no, this is a little bit similar to what we just saw in terms of Rakdos Painter versus, Tempo, Force of Will, or Force of You, excuse me. Tempo, Force, Creature, sort of Tempo deck. So it's a little bit similar, but there are some key differences here in terms of what Rodney has available to fight against the Painter deck. So let me just take a look at Rodney's removal spells. The most important one here is Swords to Plowshares. So we talked about how Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineer are very good at being able to rebuy Painter Servant. Well, you can't rebuy Painter Servant if it gets exiled off of Swords to Plowshares. So that one's going to be, that one is going to be extremely important here.
I'm trying to get the deck list up on my screen here so I can have a little look. Okay, there they are. Found them now. As Evan, a lot of 1-drops going off on the battlefield. Now we're going to start going to Goblin Welder into Goblin Engineer. If this resolves, we'll be able to look for a deck, get any artifacts, put it in the graveyard. Quite scary, but it is going to eat a Daze to get so it does not resolve.
Yep, and Devin really wanted to go ahead and resolve that Engineer, because then whatever artifact you searched off of the Engineer, you can then get back with the Welder, and already kind of has an artifact on deck with the Saga, so you can just go play land 3, make a construct, and then use the construct to weld something back into play. Or actually, Rodney offering a trade here. We'll have to see if Devin takes it, does not.
I was just about to ask you, it makes sense, right, that they wouldn't trade, because obviously Devin had the option to also attack, I believe, and chose against it. So no, Rodney knows, okay, they value that. That means I can swing in with my Delver here. It's a bit of fast mana.
Yeah, so there was a Wasteland for Rodney taking the Badlands. Could have chose the Urza Saga, but chose the Badlands to try and cut Devin off even more mana, cut off red, and then cut off of the Saga eventually goes to Chapter 3, but got really punished here with the Ancient Tomb because now that can activate the Urza Saga, which wouldn't have been able to do with just a normal land drop.
Yeah, that's huge. Obviously, we're going to see the lightning bolt taken down. That's the old GP promo art. Love to see it. That's actually one of my favorite arts. I do use that, and it looks like end of turn we're going to make ourselves a. Oh no, I think we're going to combat. We're going to then block with the construct. Now we're going to have this on the stack. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, both these players at 5-1. 6-1 means that you can ID the last round and get into that top 8. We did have 172 players this weekend, all battling out to try and get there, but there can only be 8. As we see, the Saga is going to get activated. I think a token's on its way to hit the battlefield. And now we're going to go search for a deck, try and find any artifacts. We've converted mana cost 0 or 1.
Yeah, a lot of options here for Devin as far as what they want to go towards. We could get a Lotus Petal for mana, a Grindstone for a combo piece, a Mox Opal, a Nihil Spellbomb, and I think that's about it. Yeah, one of those options. And with the presence, we're going to go ahead and get a Mox Opal. Interesting. So that must mean that Devin does not have a ton of mana left over because, Devin is aware of the presence of Murktide Regent in Rodney's deck, so wants to be able to maybe go towards something like a Spellbomb to be able to shut that off as quick as possible before Rodney can deploy that.
I love the sequence in here from Devin, how like he's kind of playing things out very methodically. He knows that mana is going to be a big issue here, and it looks like we've got 4 of it on the stack. So this is going to be paint. So have we got 2 mana floating, or am I going crazy here?
No, it did look like... Yeah, no, I think we did tap the Ancient Tomb, the Saga, and the Mox Opal. But the Painter's Servant, that was kind of weird. Interesting. So I guess we just floated some mana.
Yeah, maybe.
Interesting.
I'm sure chat has picked up on something probably that we haven't. I'm not quite sure why we're taking the extra 2 damage there when we don't need to.
Oh, I know. The Ancient Tomb was tapped on upkeep for the Saga. So the Ancient Tomb was tapped on upkeep, and then you tap the Saga and the Opal to play the Painter. That's what happened.
That's why they pay you the big money, good sir. Picking up on those little interactions there. That's a good read, good spot. Remember that's also the reason why the token did not attack. But that token is pretty big already, just a 3/3. Another Saga token could potentially add to the battlefield next turn, unless we see something like a Wasteland. Full 4 copies, I believe, for Rodley. Let's have a little check. Yep, full 4 copies in the deck. There's nothing spicy sticking out to me in this list. It is kind of what you'd expect: Murktides, Delvers, Dragonmace, Chandlers, and
a new card wheel though.
Yeah, there's a couple of 4 for Lynxes in here. 3 copies of that. Anything spicy in the sideboard? There's a couple we could talk about, but we'll carry on with this matchup first. Let's see what's going on as we get more construct tokens start getting added. And
I don't know what that one is. Mason's got me on that one. I can't tell what that one is. I'm sure chat's going to point it out very quickly.
I'm looking. It could be
Mason. You win.
Don't take it away. Grindstone, chat.
Oh, it must be okay. Judge promo Grindstone. I see. I have never seen that in my entire life before.
And we were all here to witness it. Okay, here's the deck list. Here's the 75 on the screen for you all here. What do you like here? What are we bringing in?
All right, so from Roddy's side of things, I think I like let's take a look. Meltdowns, obviously those are slam dunks. Hydroblast, against the mostly mono red deck, you're definitely going to want those. Surgical Extraction can help fight over the Goblin Engineer and Goblin Welder, and then Null Rod, also a slam dunk. So I think those cards are great.
Right, let's go across to see the Painter Servant deck. Let's see what's we got going on in there. Listen to the production team. No one's shouting in my ear saying they can't do that yet. So we'll see what. I'm pretty sure they're on it. They're trying to do that in the background. But if you are just tuning in, I'm going to remind you that we did start with 172 players this weekend. We are in round number 7. We're getting very close to that, being able to get handshakes and sort of shuffle out our top 8 and work out who's going to be in it. We will be bringing you the top 8 today. So after this round, we're going to have round number 8, and then we're going to bring in the top 8. So 4 more rounds at least of Magic action. So if you like Legacy, make sure you do hit that button here, and everybody is going to move forward from it. And here we are. We've got it up on the screen for you. Talk me through this one, Devin.
So for the Rakdos Painter side of things on Devin's side, potentially wants to go towards the Maguses. We saw them be very good against the Death Shadow deck, but the issue here is Rodney does have access to red mana, and red mana means Lightning Bolt. So not going to be as kind of lights out as they were against the Blue-Black Shadow deck. Might still want to go towards those. Fury, maybe something to clean up a Delver and a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Sheoldred's Edict to help clean up Murktide Regent. But past that, not a ton here for Devin.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's see if we can get back down to our time-shifted Magic. Let's see what's going on. See who's going to be able to take down game number 2. And we're starting off on the left of your screen, I imagine, with Rodney on the play. And we're going to start off straight off with Dragon Rage Chandler. Great turn 1 play for him.
Yep, looks like no bauble here for Rodney to be able to surveil and maybe fix the draw step. And we're going to start on Devin's side with a Goblin Welder. You know, this is basically exactly what we saw last game, except replace the Dragon's Rage Channeler with the Delver of Secrets. I'll have to see if Devin has a follow-up Goblin Engineer to put an artifact in the graveyard to be able to turn on the Welder. And one thing that we didn't get to see in the last Painter match that we watched was that Chaos Defiler. That's that card that we were talking about. Now, Goblin Engineer can only return artifacts with mana value 3 or less. However, Goblin Welder does not have that line of text, so you can put the Chaos Defiler in the graveyard with Engineer and then get it back with Welder. So we'll have to see if that's something that that plays out.
Just attack for 1 here, play our land drop and pass the turn. Wasteland in hand. Now we've got a target for it with that bad land entering the battlefield. And I think we've got an end of turn a lightning bolt trigger our Dragon Rage Channeler.
Yep, that is going to be the case. We'll have to see what Rodney wants to go ahead and do with the Surveil. Thinking about it. And I can't quite get a good look at Devin's hand.
That's a creature going to the graveyard. They're going to help with Delirium. Okay, this is a Bowmaster. Love to see it.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I'm just trying to think if the Lotus Petal is still in the stack. But in any case, we're going to go Bowmaster to try and fight for Channeler, and then in response, Swords to Plowshares on Goblin Welder.
Instant again, not what we're after. So that means it is not going to be a 3/3. That 1 point damage is going to be able to take it down. And then Lightning Bolt, no, the Lightning Bolt's still on the stack. So see, that's going at the Golden Welder. That's going to spawn and by the well, it's all cleaned up and done. There's just going to be a tiny little army on the battlefield.
1/1 versus nothing. It's legacy stacks get really weird sometimes, especially when you combine like Force of Wills and Flusterstorms and all this stuff. There's just 10 spells in the stack, and it's really hard to figure out. As you see, a Wasteland here taking care of Badlands, and we'll have to see what Devin has as follow up. Again, a lot of powerful 3-drop plays like Fable the Mirror Breaker, and does have that Lotus Petal. Did go ahead and deploy a land. I'm going to have to take a look at the mana base here, Will, because I don't know about that one.
People at home couldn't see mine and your faces when that land got played. We both instantly just like big puppy dog eyes.
I'm going to assume that it's a Great Furnace because there's really... I know what the other lands look like. Okay, chat's confirming that it is a Great Furnace. Yeah, I have never seen that before.
I'm pretty sure I've seen it before. I think it's the set. I don't know why. The one with the little book that's open. I think I could be wrong. I think it's that sort of era of Magic as a Wasteland is going to come down.
You see, Will, they just keep printing all these promo versions of cards just to mess with us.
So we can all have these pretty decks. That's why.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Sure. Everyone wants to pimp their deck out even more than they already do. All the EDH players love this type of thing. The special one-of cards, get them in their decks. It used to just be Judge promos back in the day, back when me and you were wee little snappers. Now we've got secret layers coming out every month, alternate full art foils of this, that, and the other. Okay, here's one we haven't seen yet, but we spoke about it quite a bit. And this is the Phyrexian Dragon Engine. I do love that name, but unfortunately, it's not going to live much longer.
Beautiful card here. It's perfect for Devin because I guess we do have the Wasteland to take care of the Great Furnace, but does have access to 3 mana. If we can get up to 5 and flash that back, not only will it be a 2/2 double strike with haste, but we'll also get to utilize the ability and draw some more cards off of it.
So it looks like this is going to be an Engineer hitting the battlefield now. So it is resolving. We get to go put another artifact into our graveyard. In the main, I'm trying to think out what could we be getting here. We've got Painter Service. There's nothing crazy from the sideboard. No ensnaring bridges like we saw last time.
Looks like we're going to go for the Grindstone. And that makes sense because if you draw the other combo piece, you want to have one of those in the graveyard to be able to kind of just get that combo set up as soon as possible.
There is a Chaos Defiler on the board. That's one that you don't typically see. This is from
quick.
The Warhammer sets.
Looks like Rodney is going to go ahead and concede there. Unable, looks like had a Force of Will, but not enough mana to cast it. And that is going to be Devin taking the match 2-0.
Jeez, I was over here looking at my screen trying to get the next slide up, seeing what we're looking for. I turn back around, the game's over, just like that. That's how easy things can happen in Legacy, ladies and gentlemen. So welcome back to the virtual booth. My name is Will Hall. That's Demo Donnelly. That is going to be the end of round number 7. Round number 8, I think it's getting paired right now, so we're going to have a short little break, and then we'll be right back with you. So make sure you stick around, and we'll see you all soon.